So far, yeah.
I mean,
Lisa is here. Lisa, can you hear me? Hello. Lisa is here. Diana and Lisa, you are on mute. Do you want to say something so I can test?
1, 2, 3, testing. This is Lisa.
Yes,
How are
1, 2,
you?
3, go. Yeah, very well. Thank you. Good to see you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's amazing. Hello,
Hi, this is Diana here.
Hi, Diana. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you really well.
Thank you very much.
Why the recording has started now? Altaf, have you started the recording?
No, I haven't pressed anything.
Automatically now? Yeah, okay. MC. And then we can let people in about 5 seconds, let's say.
welcome, Mr. Rastogi. Nice to meet you. Can you hear us fine? Can we do a quick audio check before we start with Mr. Rastogi?
Yeah, I think we are on the clock. We need to get
I have one quick question in terms
Yes,
of video.
please.
Do we
Yeah.
turn it off? Do we
Keep
turn
it
it
on.
off
Keep it on. Keep it on. It
during
would
the
be-
entire webinar?
It's up to you, but while you are speaking, it would be good.
Especially when we all speaking. Yeah. Up to
I
you
can.
now.
Okay, great. We are
Okay.
moving into the room. It's already 2 o'clock. So 3, 2, 1, I'm going to mute myself. MC, please let everyone into the room.
Hello, everyone. We're ready to kick off. Just a quick note to say this webinar has interpretation to Spanish and Portuguese. If you wish to listen in those languages, please click on the interpretation icon and select Spanish or Portuguese. Please also select English if you wish to listen in English.
Buenos días a todos. Para los que estén interesados, tenemos traducción el día de hoy de nuestro foro. Para acceder a la interpretación pueden ir al icono de interpretación abajo, escoger el idioma español o portugués. Muchas gracias.
And as always, let us know in the chat if you're having any technical issues, and just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded.
Y les recordamos también que si tienen alguna pregunta o algún problema técnico, por favor déjenoslo saber en el chat y le atendremos de esta manera. Además, recordarles que vamos a grabar este foro.
All right, housekeeping rules out of the way. Let's start. Good afternoon and good morning, everybody, depending where you are. And welcome to this discussion on just transition. With our guest speakers today, we'll be looking at governance and finance in particular, what is needed to implement just transition programs successfully. Just quickly, my name is Virginia Bagnoli. I'm Senior Project Manager in the Government and Policy team at the Climate Group. We're here today really to build bridges and connect states and regions committed to just transition and learn from key players who are going to share on-the-ground solutions with us, uncovering lessons from just transition governance and resources schemes in India, European Union, and Argentina. Let's have a quick look at the agenda together. So we're going to have the next 90 minutes together. I'll soon give the floor to my colleague Faryal Gohar, Project Manager for the Just Transition Task Force project, who will tell you more about the initiative, which we're running in partnership with the Scottish Government. We'll then be chatting with our brilliant speakers, Mr. Ejay Rastogi, Ms. Balbina Gluza, and Mr. Enrique Martua. Don't worry, we'll introduce you properly later, and we'll bring diverse perspectives to just transition governance and financing in particular. Towards the end of the webinar, we'll take questions from the floor, which you can put in the chat whenever you want, and then wrap up the session. Thanks again for joining. We're really happy you're all here with us today. before we start, we just wanted to kick off with a quick icebreaker. Please type in the chat your answer to one of the following questions. For example, your name and government. It's always nice to know where people are tuning in from. And maybe tell us even one reason why Just Transition interests you. I'll pick on a few while we let people come in with this. Let me just check the chat. People are being a little bit shy. Well, maybe I'll just start with me. I think I find Just Transition concept really interesting because to me, it's really about trying not to make the same mistakes again with this incredible transition and transformation we'll have to go through to become zero emissions. Let me just move on. And I'll invite my colleague Faryal to introduce the Just Transition Task Force, which is hosting this session really, and will provide background information on why we're all here today. Faryal, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Virginia. I hope you can hear me nice and well.
Yes.
Okay, that's wonderful. Good morning or good afternoon, dear colleagues and honorable guest speakers. My name is Faryal Gohar, and I'm a project manager for the Under 2 Coalition at Climate Group. And on behalf of the entire Under 2 Coalition, I welcome you all to our today's peer forum. To begin with, I would like to give you a quick overview of the project and the progress that we have made to the Just Transition Task Force so far. As Virginia mentioned earlier, that the Just Transition Task Force is a partnership between the Scottish Government and Climate Group as a secretariat of the Under 2 Coalition. Through this project, we have established a Just Transition Task Force, which comprised of global states and regional governments, and together they are taking collective and individual efforts towards just transition. Currently, we are in the second phase of the project, which we kicked off, I believe, in September last year. And here, I would really like to thank all the governments who kindly took out time and contributed significantly to the survey that we shared with you all. And based on your responses, we have designed multiple activities for the current phase of the project. So thank you all for taking part in that. In terms of the geographical footprint of the task force, I'm really pleased to say that currently the task force is comprised of 19 active governments. So during the first phase of the project, we had 11 active governments from all around the world who stayed really active, and they participated throughout the entire project duration. Then just recently, as a response to the survey, we have been joined by 8 more governments. And as you can see here on the screen, we have got a very good mix of governments who are coming from Global North as well as from Global South, and they represent almost all the regions, including North America, Latin America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Here, I would like to give you a very quick highlight of what we achieved in the first phase of the project, because we made some progress, we delivered some amazing activities. So first, we begin by recruiting the governments from the entire Under 2 Coalition. As a result of that, we interviewed 20 governments to understand their perspectives and their positioning on just transition. And based on that research, we published a research called Internal Analysis. Later on, we conducted a workshop to co-create just transition principle for states and regional governments. And finally, we developed and published 3 case studies, which we shared widely with the Under 2 Coalition members. I'm sure we have shared these resources with you earlier, and they are also available on the Just Transition Task Force project webpage. But if you are keen, we can share them again after this webinar so that you can review them in your personal time if you wish to review them. In the current phase of the project, we are focusing on 4 things. So first of all, we wanted to expand the task force, and therefore we reached out to the entire Under 2 Coalition. We invited more governments to come and join the task force. As a result of that activity, as I mentioned earlier, a few more governments joined, and now the task force is looking really good. We have got 19 governments on board with us. Secondly, we are focusing to understand the current positioning of states and regions on just transition. And as part of that, we conducted a survey. We are really grateful for all the governments who contributed to that. And based on your input, we have designed multiple activities for the current phase of the project. So for example, we are focusing on providing policy support through peer learning. And as part of that, we have developed a reading list, which comprised of 10 key readings for the states and regional governments. And hopefully next week, we should be able to disseminate that among the Under2 Coalition. Secondly, we are focusing on delivering a series, and we call this series as Let's Hear It from the Expert series. We kicked off the series last year in December at COP, where we already started having discussions with the subnational governments. And today we have reconvened again in the form of this peer forum, and hopefully in about a month's time, we will reconvene again with some exciting new topic to focus on during the peer forum. So please keep an eye on the invitation. And finally, we are working towards profile raising of the governments in the form of case studies. On that note, I have got a request for you all. If you have got an interesting story or an initiative or a project that you are working on just transition, and you would like to share that with the Under2 Coalition, I would really like to invite you to come together and maybe co-design a case study with us. If you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me or one of my colleagues that you are already in touch with, and we would be very happy to work with you on the case study. I think that's pretty much it from my side. I'll just stop here and hand it over to Virginia so that we can have a deep dive into the discussion, as we have got some exciting and really interesting guest speakers on the call with us. So thank you so much. Over to you, Virginia.
Oh, thank you, Faryal, for such a great introduction to the project, and looking forward really to the upcoming activities. Before we go to the guest speakers, we just got very nice, welcome remarks in the chat. So just wanted to pick on a few. We have governments attending today from Canada, I see, Germany, Brazil, and it's in South Africa. And it's nice how clearly people on the line are working on the issue. It's part of, their day-to-day job. And for example, we have Luis Paulo is saying that the interest in just transition is driven by the search for a fairer, healthier, and more accessible world for all. And that's really a lot of the messages I'm seeing, which is really nice. Let's move to the speakers then for our conversation. As promised, let's just introduce all of them properly. Let's start from Mr. Ajay Kumar Rastogi. He's the chairman of the Sustainable Just Transition Task Force and Green Hydrogen Mission at the government of Jharkhand, India. And actually, it's the first initiative of its kind in India. So we're really grateful to have him online today to tell us a bit more. Just checking again on the audio, maybe, Mr. Rastogi, just checking that you can hear us and that you can speak.
Yeah, it's perfectly all right. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Perfect.
Yeah.
And then we also have Ms. Balbina Gluza. She's coordinator of the Just Transition platform at the European Commission, bringing over 20 years of experience in EU affairs and also just transition in European Commission services. Balbina, just checking again that your mic is fine.
Yes, I'm fine. Thank you, Virginia, and good afternoon to all participants.
Thank you. We also can hear you really well. And then at last, Enrique Mortua, current senior advisor at the Independent Global Stocktake Diplomacy for Latin America and the Caribbean. He's an expert in climate negotiations and led an Argentinian NGO, FARN, for many years on climate and energy policy, also at the national level. Hi, Enrique. Thanks for being here.
Hello, Virginia. I'm very pleased to meet you and to have you and to be here with you all.
Awesome. Let's get started. Just a heads up, we don't have slides or presentations today, so let's really just focus on our speakers and take the slides off. That's perfect. I wanted to start with a couple of scene-setting questions to you all. And just to recap on governance, really, we'd like to explore together what kind of governance systems promote fair and green transitions in terms of institutional arrangements, for example, openness of decision and policy-making processes, and so on. And when it comes to resources mobilization, which of course we know they're essential to make this really happen on the ground, we are interested in learning more about what works best for investment plans, funding opportunities, but also public budget decisions and sustainable fiscal policies. So let's get started. I'll ask the same questions to you all. Let's start from Ajay, if that's fine. Could you please briefly introduce your government's approach to just transition governance?
Okay. So, good evening from India. And
Good evening.
see, first of all, why government has taken a call to form a task force, that is very important. From Jharkhand perspective, from India's perspective, if you look at it, coal and fossil fuel is a major source of energy for India. Our dependence on fossil fuel is much larger than any other part. Especially in Jharkhand, when we look at, it's about 96% our energy mix coming from fossil fuel. And renewables are not. Just a minute.
No worries.
Yeah, we are asking for the language. Yeah, this English only. Yes. Okay. So when we started working towards net zero, then we realized that we need to develop a strategy for moving away from fossil fuel-based economy. And the dependence in our state is much larger as compared to even India. Our 96% energy mix is coming from coal. So even the extent of dependence is much larger. About 3/4 of my state is producing coal. We produce 30% coal of the country. We supply 30% coal of the country, and we do have 40% mineral reserve in the state. So when we migrate from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel economy, that interdependence on that entire ecosystem, coal-based ecosystem is going to be, we need to tackle that interdependence on the coal. Because the kind of a development in my state which has taken place, we have iron ores, a lot of industry which is consuming coal that has come up. So overall, that ecosystem which is there, it is consuming fossil fuel, either in the form of energy or in the form of industrial coal. So when we do away from fossil fuel, then the livelihood, how we are going to take care of the livelihood, what kind of economic development state is looking for, because extent of dependence is very, very large. And when we combine together, it's about 40% of the state revenue come from the fossil fuel. So then you can understand the dependence on fossil fuel is much, much larger.
Yeah.
So we need to plan a new economic development. How do we do it? And because it's not it's a year or 2 years a strategy, we need to have a long-term strategy for it. And how we can create a new ecosystem where dependence on fossil fuel is less. Second is, when these companies, those who are producing fossil fuel, when they shift their business from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel, so they are carrying out a lot of CSR activities, like they are taking care of a lot of welfare activity in that particular region where they are doing coal mining. So from where we are going to get, state is going to get resources to take care of the people and to fulfill the commitment these companies were taking care in the past. That is second region. Third is, once we have to attain net zero for the country, we need to have net zero strategy for the state. How do we do hand holding for decarbonizing the industry also? Because simply doing away with coal is not going to work. or simply doing away with the fossil fuel is not going to work. We need to provide hand holding because we have large presence of MSME in the state. So to give them a support, what kind of a strategy is required? That was the reason we created this task force. And finally, from where this money is going to come? That's a big, big question. When your dependence, 40% dependence on fossil fuel, and then how do you supplement this kind of how we can supplement that kind of a revenue loss to the state? What kind of a new economic development is possible? That is the strategy. That is the reason state has created the task force, and we are working upon it.
Thank you. That's really interesting, and thanks for sharing also more information about how coal is prominent in your region. That puts everything in context for sure. Balbina, can I move to you? Same question. Could you please introduce your organization approach? Let's say in this case, not government, because you're from European Commission, but your approach to just transition governance.
Yes, thank you, Virginia, and also best greetings from Europe, from another corner of our planet that we would like to make healthy, and that's why we are here all together. Yes, I would like to add maybe a few words to explain you the approach of the European Commission and the European Union towards climate neutrality. We have strategy called European Green Deal that was set up several years ago, and one of the main core pillars of this strategy is creation of so-called Just Transition Fund. This fund, equipped with over 90 billion euro, is there to help these regions that are most heavily impacted by the transition process, and to mitigate the consequences of this process, because there are different funds overall in the European Union, but this one is really targeted for and it's very territorial oriented, for those who suffer the most, and this was different than for other funding that is available. So what this fund can finance? That's the first question, of course, and we have very many activities that could be supported in these regions. For instance, upskilling and reskilling of workers from coal mines and other industries that are highly polluting. We invest with this funding also in small and medium enterprises, in creation of firms, in research and innovation, environmental rehabilitation of sites that are polluted, in clean energy, in job search assistance, in different areas. They are all listed in the regulation that is governing the Just Transition Fund. And to make these regions more active, and also to make it easier for them to access this funding, European Commission has set up so-called Just Transition platform. It's quite a unique approach because we have created it in 2020 from scratch, to dedicate it to all stakeholders from the Just Transition Fund regions, and through this platform they can easier access the financing. For instance, we organize technical assistance on the ground called JTP Grant Work, where we send our experts to the regions who help in the Just Transition Fund territories to the people. They help people in authorities, regional authorities in capacity building, for instance, or in some communication campaigns, in mobilization of stakeholders, in project development, in very different types of support that is requested by the people on the ground. We have also under the platform a stream of support for the people who would like to work within the working groups. We created them for different sectors, for instance, for steel, chemicals, cement, and there are people from different backgrounds who meet. Like for instance, from trade unions, from academia world, from companies or businesses, NGOs, and they gather together and then they discuss what are the bottlenecks of the implementation of the founding, how to do it properly, what are their concerns, and what are the recommendations and solutions for regional authorities. We organize also twice a year Just Transition platform conferences where anybody who is interested in Just Transition can take part. They are web streamed. They take place in Brussels, but all sessions are web streamed and you can register and follow them. The next one will be in April, from 16, 19, 18 of April. And there we discuss actually at the EU level all sorts of questions related to Just Transition process in the EU. So it's quite huge gathering. Usually we have around 1,000 participants from all
Wow.
regions covered by Just Transition Fund. And we do many more activities, information campaigns. We also collect knowledge products on Just Transition, and everything what we have, we publish on our Just Transition platform website. So if you are interested in Just Transition in Europe, just please type Just Transition platform and you will be directed to our website where we have a lot of knowledge, policy approaches, case studies, map with through which one you can access also to the territories covered by the fund, and much more.
Thank you, Balbina. And there will be space to say more about your initiatives for sure. I find particularly interesting, you know, what you said about also running programs on upskilling and reskilling. This is something we're looking at too through the Just Transition Task Force with Under 2 Coalition States and Regions. And so we're gonna actually have a session about that. It's coming up next in the next month or so, which is clearly becoming more and more important for many of the governments we work with. And just maybe moving on briefly to Enrique as well. Again, same question. Just to briefly introduce from your point of view, you know, your government's approach to Just Transition governance. At this point, I believe more from a standpoint from Argentina or Latin America, you know, in general at large, if you may.
Thank you, Virginia, and again, thanks for the presentation and thanks for the invitation in this event. So Argentina, it's a country that is a large country in Latin America. It's a G20 economy. It's a country that has a really big diversity of sources, and consequently, it has a very diversified emissions matrix. So, but of course, many will know a lot about Argentina in terms of the farms, in terms of the forests, in terms of the on the different aspects of what the land produces here, which in the last greenhouse gas inventories became the most important let me see, it's asked me to confirm the language, but yeah,
No worries.
sorry. So there is so Argentina produces a lot of food and a lot of natural resources, and that has to do a lot with the main economic income for the country. And that, of course, translates in what the situation is in the country in terms of the sectors, which sectors are more vulnerable, which sectors are more powerful in terms of the economic decisions. And right now we can't avoid the fact that the government just changed a month ago, and 2 months ago almost now. And this is something that that obviously would change a lot and have different perspectives in everything that I would say now. because most of the things that were built and that were actually in conversations were up to December last year. The new government is completely different in their approaches to the previous government. That is something we have to acknowledge and have to wait and see how that is going, what the approach of the current administration will be around this.
Yeah.
Being that said, it is important to say that just transition is something that was always present in the unions when talking about climate and when talking about environment. Argentina is a country that is very much unionized, and we have large unions, very powerful unions in different sectors, and that creates also a different dynamic in terms of the relationship between workers, owners, government, and for that reason, Argentina was, since 2018, part of the PAGE initiative, the Partnership for Action on Green Economy, which actually was convening UN agencies, the Ministry of Labor, the unions, civil society, and Ministry of Environment. So the conversations around just transition are there, but it's important to actually say that in Argentina, and many other countries will not be much different, the just transition narrative is limited to the narrative. It's actually something that is mostly wish list. It's mostly something that we should have. There are plenty of conversations, there are plenty of positions, there are plenty of studies. The ILO, the International Labour Organization, has a really good presence and a very respected, convenient role in between all these actors. And this is something very, very positive here. Even when Argentina organized the G20 in 2018, there was a lot of conversations about the just transition, the participation of unions, and different aspects. Finally, the pandemic in 2020, 2021 brought a lot of lessons of what the impacts of transition would be, because the transition there was just like sudden. It was really immediate, and the government had to react very quickly in terms of social assistance and trying to see how to work with workers that were actually losing their jobs and industries that were stopping because of the pandemic. So there are a number of studies and a number of experiences that were collected from there. Of course, with a lot of test and error that was actually collected, that was actually taken into account for what a just transition must be. And that, of course, there is a lot of agreement in terms of the participation of the unions, participation of the private sector, and participation, and the government being the provider of that space and trying to promote regulations and promote different initiatives that facilitate that just transition that we require. When it comes to Latin America, the landscape is much, much bigger. We have the diversity of different governments is actually larger, and the situations are different. So in Latin America, it's very easy when we talk about just transition to talk about coal mining or coal power plant workers to go to renewables, or how that interaction happens. But when it comes to Latin America in particular, we have to recognize as well that we have a lot of issues around the land use. How are those practices going to evolve? What is going to happen with those workers? What is happening with the logging industry? And that is something important to also consider, because normally just transition is the automatic thing that you might have is the energy sector. Because it is kind of like what we normally tend to think. But in this case, we have to be more open, more creative, because we have to think about tourism industry. We have to think about the logging industry, the farmers, how those sectors are going to evolve. And that is something that, at least to my experience, we are not seeing with a lot of dedication from many of the governments in the region. So that is something, those are part of those challenges, because it is a challenge to deal with a just transition, especially with the just part, because to make it just, you need to do a lot of effort and many other provisions have to be given.
Absolutely. And invest, adequately, of course. Well, thanks, Enrique. I was frantically taking notes because you said a lot of interesting things. And I think it's great reminder about the pandemic and how much that changed everything for all of us so quickly. And now the question is, how can we do the same for other crises, really? And yeah, a great point about other industries. And I'll be quite interested in learning more about the tourism industry and how that will be impacted, of course, in the transition to net zero emissions, for example. But let's go around again. Just very briefly, so then we can move on to a deep discussion with each one of you. There's one other question to you all that I wanted to ask. Maybe if you could respond in just 2 minutes top. From your experience, I'll go back to you, AJ. What is a top success factor for effective resource mobilization without leaving, of course, the most vulnerable behind? So about really mobilizing the resources and the financial resources to make this happen.
Ajay said, my state. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
3 subsidiaries of Coal India, they are producing coal in my state, and to the extent of 78,000, approximately 78,000 acres of land is under possession for Coal India. And there are about more than 100 mines which are working right now. But sooner or later, once their reserves are exhausted or they become economically unviable, this piece of land will be available with the state government and the central government. And these areas are having a lot of infrastructure. They have very good rail network for evacuation. They have very good network for evacuation of power. And they are available in chunk and they are free from any encumbrance. So a huge chunk of land is available. If it is reclaimed and rehabilitated properly, that piece of chunk can be converted into new economic zone because they have all infrastructure facility to become new development center or economic center in the state. Because we need to have, as the other speaker was saying, that how it has to be just. We need to create a lot of greener job in the state. So to create that kind of environment, new economic development will be required, and this piece of land is going to work very handy for the state government and for the central government because that is available in chunk. So what we are trying to do, every state, every district, every subunit in the state has got a peculiar development. Like when we talk about district in Jharkhand, like Dhanbad. So majority of industry which is there, it is now coal based. So what kind of a alternative industry who doesn't use coal or any other fossil fuel can be developed? It is very well linked. So we have identified few areas which can be very potential, like a lot of water is available in the mining areas. How we can create mining tourism like Poland and various other EU countries, how it is possible. Second is how these areas, because it is undulating terrain, we have contours, a lot of contour. How Jharkhand can work as a pump storage facility for pump storage? How is that possible? Because for RE development, you require 24/7 electricity. These areas we are trying to convert them into, with a photovoltaic cell, we are trying to convert them into generation of power. Then how these areas can be utilized for what you call pumped storage. How is that possible? Second, lot of rare earth minerals are also available in those areas. How we can develop that kind of a ecosystem in that area where, because for energy you require rare earth metals also, and we have 16% India's rare mineral reserves in that particular region. So what kind of a new economic development is possible? We are trying to explore and trying to build up a new, for every district, what we are planning, new economic development regime we are trying to portray, moving away from traditional steel, alumina industry, cement industry. We are trying to bring in a lot of value addition into that. So I think we will be, as estimated, is about dependence of formal induced worker is much higher in our state. Dependence of induced worker on coal-based ecosystem or fossil fuel-based ecosystem is much higher in my state. How we can shift by skilling or reskilling or upskilling, that's what we are trying to do, so that we are, and it's not only the question of skilling or upskilling, it's question about how we can provide jobs there, how we can create jobs there within the state, within that particular region, so that transition becomes smooth and just for them.
Thank you. I think the point around, again, yeah, job and upskilling and reskilling and employment in general, I think, of course, is strongly connected to what we're talking about. Balbina, just over to you with very just quickly, top of your mind, what are the top success factor to mobilize resources for just transition, given that the Commission has this fund and it's been working for a few years now?
Thank you, Virginia, and I listened carefully to to other speakers, to my colleagues in the panel, and I must say that I completely agree with you, and I think this was the starting point also for the European Union, that the transition process is not only about coal, not only about energy, not only about coal workers. It's so much more, and it's very complex. It's about youth, about skills, about women, about elderly people, about other sectors, carbon-intensive sectors, steel, chemicals, cement, paper. That there are very many aspects of this process that could be discussed, and we are limited with time. So coming back to your question about the success factor, I think for us what was very important is to identify the territories that are most hardly hit by this transition. And this was very interesting and very challenging exercise. We had to discuss with the member states and identify with them these regions that are in most urgent need of support. And there was a special procedure for applying for this funding done, in the sense that we requested, it's in the regulation itself, we requested these member states to prepare for these regions so-called territorial just transition plans. And this work paid off, because in these plans, actually these regions had to describe the strategy for the territory, how they will phase out polluting activities, how they will contribute to greener planet, what will be the milestones of this transition by 2030 and then by 2050. And actually they had to demonstrate that some transition is going on. So they had to indicate, for instance, number of jobs that will be lost, which type of jobs are needed, in which green sectors, just to make up their minds at the regional level and then provide this information in this plan. And this plan is a basis for us for the founding. It has to be had to be approved, all plans by the European Commission, and then it gives kind of basis for further development in the territories. So it's also very helpful for the stakeholders in these territories to see what is the strategy, what the region wants to achieve, with phasing out some activities and for which activities the regions would like to switch. And I think this is very helpful, in fact, this type of approach, because it was beneficial for us in the European Commission, but it was also very beneficial for the regions and for the stakeholders that were guided a bit through this exercise and know a bit what to expect also on the ground.
Yeah. Thanks, Balbina. There is a little bit of noise coming from you. I know you're in a big open plan office.
I will mute now.
No, thank you. But that's absolutely really interesting. And I think we want to learn more about, we want to get a bit more granular on how the fund works and what are the examples of how this in practice have been implemented. So we'll get to that in a second. But I wanted to give Enrique as well a chance to respond on this. And again, top of your mind, you know, the major success factor that you think could support in mobilize more resources to really have the resources really to do this transition properly. What could
I think, thanks. I think that one of the key factors is that the promise of the just transition is credible, and it actually that it delivers or is able to deliver results. And I think that especially like in Argentina, for instance, there's one company that it actually shifted the entire portfolio of their energy portfolio to renewables. And that even included shutting down oil power plants. And basically they actually did a whole process to reallocate the workers and trying to retrain them for working in the renewable energy industry, or reallocating them in other parts of the country for giving them those options. But what was the driver that actually the business was actually improving? And what the factor that actually mobilized that and gave them the success story is that they actually proved that the salaries would actually be better, the conditions would be better, and that actually made everyone on board, having good conversations with the unions and trying to see and to have everyone on board. I think that is one of the key things to make sure that that works. Now, the driver for that was that there was a shift in the investments, as there was a shift in the interest of the company due to the profit that they were actually, the business that they were seeing as more profitable for the future. So that kind of thing is the one that gives you more reassurance, and those kind of factors are the ones that could actually promote and trigger to get more support. On the other hand, when we talk about more in the governmental part, is to allow and to make give clear signals. I think that our economy works a lot with signals, and you need to give those signals. If you are actually giving signals that you are shifting from one side to another, it will be something that will promote and will get you the funding, will get you the support, will get you the connections. And that relates maybe at some point with the JETPs, maybe that could relate to how the market is shifting and globally. And that is also something that is to be seen. like is to take into account, because that is something that will actually get you the support that you might need for those processes. But if you don't have the people engaged, the unions, the workers, the communities, it's going to be super challenging. And then because the market works a lot with signals, you will actually have people going away from that. As long as you have conflicts, as soon as you have rejection or not acceptance of the change, you probably will start losing, or like the people, the investors will see it as vulnerabilities, as risks for the investment, and that actually undermines the whole plan. That is, I think it goes like both ways if you want to see all those factors and to get that the mobilization of resources.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think we've seen in some markets backlashes exactly because not everyone was on board and that dialogue didn't really happen. And I think what you say about unions is something that, yeah, resonates with me a lot. And I wonder if we could look into this more in some of the next sessions. I just wanted, as I said earlier, Balbina, I wanted to actually do a deep dive with you now. I just wanted to mention that Mr. Ajay Rastogi had to leave. He wasn't feeling really well, so he really said goodbye to everyone, but he couldn't continue. So we all wish him well, and we might just ask more questions later on and send it via email to everyone his answers. But yeah, so let's move on to you, Balbina. Now we want to just ask you really to provide some more specific, as specific as you can be on the webinar, let's say, on example of successful projects or programs and schemes that you supported via the Just Transition Fund. You said a little bit earlier, but if you could elaborate some more, that would be great.
Yes, sure, Virginia. As I said earlier, there are plenty of different measures that could be financed, starting with upskilling and reskilling of workers through the SME support, creation of new firms, so the diversification of economy in principle, and then investments in clean energy and so on. We are at the stage when we started implementation now of the fund, so I cannot give you examples from all member states because also we don't have time, but primarily because this process started in the sense that now it's in the hands of the member states. They have to, the regions have to set up calls for the projects, so the people now apply with their ideas, with their projects, and they will be granted funding in the coming months, hopefully, and through that the money will be spent. But in some countries this process is already a bit more advanced than in others. So I searched for some projects to give you maybe some bit of taste which type of investments are done now in different corners of Europe. I could start with a project that for us is important because it was the very first project that has been selected, and it's a project from Estonia, and it was the Just Transition Funding program was for Estonia adopted already in 2022, and this project was selected in 2022, and it's and this is support for investment for construction of rare earth magnet factory in the Ida-Virumaa region in Estonia, near city Narva. The company is called Neo Performance Materials, and it will construct. This factory will produce this rare earth magnets that can be then used, for instance, in the batteries for electric vehicles. And also this factory will create 1,000 new jobs in this region. and the contribution from the fund GTF, it's over 18.75 million euro for this. Of course, the total investment is higher, but because it's private company, but we contribute. The another and very different investment is done in Slovakia. It's in the Košice region, in Košice city in Bańska Bystrica region. And this is a project that, well, now has been, it will be supported, but it's now in process of being selected, and it's for the district geothermal district heating plant. So it is, we will finance with 56 million euro heating
36,
plant.
you said? 36?
56.
Oh, 56. Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
million euro. We will finance this heating plant that will switch will replace the heat source from the existing district heating network from coal to geothermal energy. And 78,000 households will benefit from this. And the savings in the pollution in greenhouse gas emissions is more or less 54,000 tons per year that will be saved through this investment. So we are very, very also excited about that. And then I will give you example of a small project, but also worth mentioning, and I think very, very innovative. We grant in the Netherlands in a city, Grot Rijnmond. We will grant sources around 750,000 euro to a startup. The startup is called Concrete3D. Oh, that's the name. And what the startup, yeah, not easy. But what they do is also not easy, because they have invented and they will produce three-dimensional prints from construction waste. So the material for the prints will be from construction waste. They will give employment also to Ukrainian refugees. Then through this project, they will, of course, contribute to decarbonization and circular economy in the region. And then there is also additional training offered by local technical college for the employees that will work then for this startup. So that's how we now try to contribute to just transition in different corners of Europe.
Oh, thank you. That's really great to have such, just to hear in practice what these projects are doing. And I think it's particularly interesting to hear about, smaller businesses, startups being, invested in as well. I think that's exciting. And especially, the project in Estonia, 1,000 new jobs, it's impressive.
Yeah. And I hope that if we have this discussion in 1 year, then I will be able to share much more with you about also project for upskilling and reskilling of workers, because this is also core of the Just Transition Fund. So there will be for sure much more already approved and put in total swing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What we hear from our Under 2 Coalition network, as you might know, a lot of the practitioners and government officials on the line are, of course, part of the Under 2 Coalition, and we run this network of states and regions around the world. And when we listen to them, what we're really hearing on big just transition issues, it is issues related to employment and how to create better jobs. And so, yeah, anything you can bring to us will be super interesting and for sure inspiring. As always, as you all know online, there's always one question about challenges, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all facing in big transitions. And so we just wanted to hear from you. Again, we know that it's not been running for such a long time, but what you've seen in terms of big challenges in some of either regions you work with or countries, EU countries as a whole, what they've faced so far and how they've been addressed. Either it can be either in developing, for example, the plans you shared earlier, or even really accessing to the fund.
I think the challenges are different in different regions, and that's why we had this very targeted approach in Just Transition Fund to see what exactly is happening on the ground and in which type of issues we can support as European Commission. Because the challenges of Just Transition process may be demographical, economical, social, environmental, maybe all of this at the same time, maybe something that's more specific in some specific regions. So we that's why these territorial Just Transition plans that I talked about earlier are very, very helpful in identifying these challenges. And I can give you a few examples also for the regions where we, at our EU level, helped out with the Just Transition platform. For instance, there is a region, Västerbotten, in north of Sweden, that is now suffering because of brain drain issues. The people are leaving from there and are searching jobs elsewhere. And they would like to attract workers for the green economy that they are developing on the ground. And they are now struggling also with the fact that it's quite in the north. So of course, for some people, the climate may be not most attractive, and they don't know how to tackle all these challenges at the same time. So what we help them out through Just Transition platform to address was, for instance, to address this brain drain issues. And we have first contacted with the regional authorities and with the municipality in Skellefteå city. We have conducted first analysis of regional labor market needs. And then with needs for collaboration from some other matching foreign regions from Sweden and outside Sweden. We have produced with the authorities on the ground a report presenting the methodology for selection of some collaboration regions, and then some kind of case study examples how the peer-to-peer learning could look like. And then we implemented a workshop first with 25 regional policymakers and stakeholders to discuss these approaches, and then prepared a playbook material for bigger conference where we presented outcomes and made initial contacts with these collaborating regions. Then we left this in the hands of the authorities to follow up. But through that, they have established the very first contacts, and because there are, of course, regions that are in which there is high unemployment rate, and people would like to move somewhere else where there are green jobs, but not enough people to cover them. We had another territory, for instance, in Czechia, city Sokolov, that was challenged by also lack of the vision of the future, because the mining are closed there, and they need now to do some rebranding campaigns for the region to find their own identity again and attract workers. So we have there helped out them with project development and also stakeholder engagement. We created
Okay.
portfolio of good practices and also just transition solutions for the city Sokolov, and some rebranding campaign, and have identified with our experts from this transition platform key strengths of this region. We have organized some larger event with presentations when we brought these local stakeholders all together and discussed, and also there was national level represented and representatives from the European Commission, and through that they have developed own local stakeholder engagement strategy for the region, and they continue now.
Okay.
So that they will rebrand the territory.
That's really fascinating to hear about the rebranding and working together on a new
and all these
identity.
What I explained to you now and to the participants, this is also available, the key lessons, the strategy itself, everything is available on our website. I will maybe paste in the chat
Please
later on.
Please do, so people can just
the
click
links
now.
that if you have if you are interested in more details, then we basically publish everything what
Sure.
we do,
Okay.
and we try to spread knowledge.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. I'd like to move on just because we
Absolutely.
got a few questions actually for you in the chat, Balbina. Just have a look now. We'll cover them later. I just wanted to also chat for a few minutes with Enrique and do a deep dive actually with him, and then we can wrap up. But Enrique, we wanted to discuss with you a bit the concept, you know, this initiative called Just Energy Transition Partnerships. It's actually something we wanted, to explore with you better, maybe in case you want to give also some more background for everybody online. The question was, what can Latin American countries learn from Just Energy Transition Partnerships to effectively mobilize resources for their own transition based on experiences, for example, of other countries that have participated or launched Just Energy Transition Partnerships. And we talked about South Africa, for example, and Indonesia, and when we were preparing this session. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Virginia, for that. In 2021 and 2022, the JETPs, the way they're called, the Just Energy Transition Partnerships, were really prominent in the margins of the G20, and South Africa was actually the very first one to move around these agreements, which are bilateral agreements normally with one or few countries that will support just energy transition plans. I think as a political signal, these plans were really big. I think that at least in the climate community, it was very well received with a lot of expectations and what that could mean. I know there's people from South Africa in the call, so I'm afraid that they might know a lot more of what I'm going to say. So, but basically, in terms of South Africa, what I know is that it depends from the presidency, and it's something that has a really high level, and that is something very good, because whenever we talk about just transition, we normally talk about like small projects, something on the side, something that goes under the radar. And these JETPs are actually something that raised the level of attention and brought to a very high political level. The case of South Africa was up to $20 billion. And that is something that is a number that is very attractive for any government to get that kind of support and to create programs and to help develop this just energy transition. So in that sense, a just energy transition partnership is actually something very appealing, very attractive. It brings money, it brings attention, but it has to be done right. Then on the other side, I have many colleagues that are very worried about what the just energy transition plan of South Africa is. Basically, because a really large part of those $20 billion are actually debt. It's not concessional funds, it's not the grants, it's debt. And that is like a lot of money. So that kind of, I think those details are also important. And in Latin America, curiously enough, doesn't have any just energy transition plan. And that is energy transition partnership, sorry. I thought that Argentina might be one of those first countries, maybe in those meetings when it got invited to the G7 in Germany a couple of years ago, but then it didn't happen. Of course, my country, Argentina, is a country that doesn't do well with debt in the last couple of years. So it is whenever we talk about debt, it's something that is very challenging just for the fact of being another debt. And that also applies with some other Latin American countries. There are quite a few Latin American countries that are very reluctant to get themselves into more debt, especially with traditional financial institutions or with other developed countries. And that is something that is challenging. So in terms of what can we learn about this is that, yes, it's a really big political push. Yes, it could actually give a really good and dedicated high-level program inside a country to deal with this and to have the opportunity to do it well. Because when you have this contradiction, like the just energy or the just transition in general has to be local, has to be targeted, has to be with the people in the ground. And that is the one thing that you have to support. But you need that high political level in order to have the conditions that could actually give the support and for those plans to be developed well. So it has to go from top down and bottom up all the way to actually have that being done well. I heard that Colombia is potentially a country that might be in the path to develop a just energy transition plan.
Right.
I think that is in the radar. The government of Petro is super vocal about the phase out of fossil fuels and the just transition. That is something that is important to take into account. That is a very big challenge that the government of Petro has, because he is really proactively talking about phasing out all fossil fuels, which is something that activists and many in civil society really like. But at the same time, we have to think about what is the replacement of those incomes and what would be the process and the timeline for phasing out. And that comes in being involved in a just energy transition plan would be really useful for the government of Colombia. Could be a really strong signal if that is done well. It could be a really good reassurance for the people that the income will be there, that the process is going to be done well, and that there will be a backup of money to actually support all the process. So potential, in terms of potential, there's a lot of potential and it's super useful and it's very nice to actually do that. It's very encouraging, but the details are the ones that we have to take into account, because all the government of Petro as well is a government that has strong narratives around the international debt and the need to reform the international financial system. So that is something that it is to be seen. But again, it would be good to make sure that Latin America could learn from all these initiatives that happen in Indonesia, in South Africa, if I'm not wrong, Thailand and Senegal as well, were around those paths. And actually India rejected it because they didn't want to get into more debt. So those are the things that I think we have to keep in mind when looking at those JETPs, which in my opinion, should be really good and should be really useful for developing countries, but they have to be done right.
Thank you, Enrique, for this analysis. I think it's really interesting and relevant for this discussion, as we were bringing in different perspectives from all over the world. And I actually think I saw one of our government officials from Indonesia on the line. I hope he's still with us. I think we're almost at time, so I would just like to ask one final question to you both, and then we can just check in the chat, or if anyone actually want to come off mute and ask questions themselves, of course, more than welcome. I think for Balbina, actually, back to you for this one too. Looking ahead for this year, for 2024, what can we expect for just transition actions, especially following the new agreement to move away from oil, gas, and coal made at COP28 in Dubai? Any trends we should be looking for, in your opinion?
As for the European Commission, our efforts, of course, continue to deliver just transition on the ground in the European Union. We will continue to support all these regions with different streams from Just Transition Fund, but also, of course, other funding, cohesion policy funding, because there are different streams of support, also for energy transition and for resilience and recovery fund that will help these member states that are now in difficult situation after COVID pandemic and energy crisis related to the war in Ukraine caused by Russia. So all these, of course, all these trends are now in place, and we accelerate, in fact, just transition through this all technical support that is available. We focus on implementation of the fund. We push the regional authorities to select good projects in different parts of Europe. So we hope that by the end of this year, a lot of money will be well spent on just transition. There is a bit of spending pressure, let's put it like this, because part of this money from Just Transition Fund has to be spent by 2026. Right. And it's not a lot of time. It's because it's a tranche from a Next Generation EU budget, so it's maybe internal cuisine, but we just need to hurry, and at the same time have a meaningful project on the ground. So that's now our focus. Great. And we continue in the Commission. There are also, just for information for the participants, that the Directorate General from which I come, it's responsible for regional and urban policy, and there are specific dedicated units, teams of people that work on a specific member state. So they work day and night for helping the authorities on the ground to implement the fund in a proper way. And these geographical units are also key players in this whole process.
Thank you, Balbina. Just moving to Enrique as well. Reflections on what should we expect this year, given also what was achieved at COP28 for just transition?
So I guess we have to think about this in different levels. We cannot ignore that we are in a very challenging and conflicting year with many conflicts around the world that normally have an impact on what the energy situation is. We have seen how the different conflicts have changed or have pushed the different prices in oil and gas, and how countries were trying to readapt to that. The good news in the middle of this unfortunate situations is that many countries that were not relying on oil and gas were more resilient to the situation, and that is something that we have to take into account. Like, if we take that global level of context, we can actually think about how that could be a push for the renewables and for the transitions to happen. On the other hand, we have elections in many countries, many important countries.
Yeah, it's true. It's a super year for elections in the world.
So the political scenario might change a lot in the upcoming months, and that is something that we have to keep in mind. We have to think about how and if the just transition gets into the political campaigns, if it's part of the platforms, if the candidates actually take that into account or not. Of course, after 2024, the political landscape of the world is gonna be, it could be very much different. And that also will shape the way we approach to the just transition. And then in terms of the COP, we have to acknowledge and celebrate that for the first time we have a very clear message that the fossil fuel era is coming to an end. Now, of course, we are going to see as well that more and more companies and even governments will try to take as much as possible while they can, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a situation where everyone acknowledges that this is going to end at some point. So let's try to do as much as possible now, which is unfortunate. It's not what I would like to see, but at the same time is something we need to keep in mind, because this is the moment when we have to think more and more about just transition, because the just part starts getting smaller and smaller as you rush into the urgency. We are always talking about the critical decade, and as soon as you get closer to 2030, the just part is getting smaller and smaller, because to make it just, you also need time. And that is
Right.
something that most of all of us who are engaging and who are involved in many of this work, we have to keep pushing around this, because it's important to have the just part develop. Try to give opportunities and try to show where the trends are going and how that brings the benefits for all. So 2024 is going to be challenging, but it will have different opportunities to highlight the importance of the just energy transition.
Thanks, Enrique. And I know you're also a climate negotiations expert, so I can imagine you could talk about this for hours, and I would listen. I think we can move to some. Oh, actually, Balbina responded to the question to her in the chat. So I'll just give people just a few seconds to think if you want to ask more questions to our speakers today. And if not, I'll ask colleagues to put slides back on so that we can wrap up the session, give you some just interesting updates on what's coming up next. I might, as we get some more questions, maybe there was a question about again for you, Balbina, it's more on if there are any aspirations for the fund to become, or actually to also invest beyond its borders, or supporting or any kind of coordination or cooperation with the Global South on this.
Yes, thank you. I replied a bit to this question because in our directorate we are dealing with the cohesion policy that is relevant for the member states of the European Union. So this funding goes to all the countries that are members of the EU, but there are other directorates that deal with the cooperation outside. I indicated there that it's DG INTPA. And what we do under the Just Transition platform is that we try to involve the stakeholders from other countries in different ways. So it's not that the funding can be moved there, but we try to share knowledge and give access to knowledge to those who want to maybe listen to us and draw some lessons or get some inspiration or also share their experience. For instance, we organize at our conferences always international sessions where we invite speakers from different continents and we exchange with them. And you can follow these sessions, as I said earlier, online. Everything is published on our Just Transition platform website, and I gave you a link in the chat. But we also have technical assistance on the ground in the regions covered by Just Transition Fund, and they're the experts from Western Balkans and Ukraine. Sometimes they can participate, for instance. So this we can grant this support also to those who are from neighboring country. The question was of the south, this is not maybe relevant for this type of participants, but we try to, of course, share as much as we can through the platform.
Thanks for answering that. It's also more information is also in the chat if you want to learn more. I think we reached an end. I wanted to just thanks again all our speakers today for taking the time to prepare and be with us. I can imagine you're part of many sessions like these. So thanks again. Just to wrap up, I think it was incredibly interesting, to bring perspectives from global North and South. And at the same time, I think we can all agree on one thing. It's so evident now how the transition to be net zero emissions to be successful, really, it has to be done in a way that addresses now socioeconomic disparities and avoids creating new ones. And as Enrique was saying, the just piece, it really cannot shrink anymore. It has to be actually larger and larger. It has to be the main center piece of it all. So again, thanks so much. And I think we at the Climate Group, as part of our Under 2 Coalition projects, we'd love to look more at this, in strengthening North-South dialogue and cooperation on this. So any ideas or any more support and interesting things that you think could support you in this journey, do let us know, and we'll make sure that we can design future project with that in mind. And now we just wanted to let you know that the next webinar, the next learning session as part of the Just Transition Task Force will be coming up at the end of next month. It's about, as I said earlier, very, very relevant, as all of you basically mentioned today, the importance of upskilling and reskilling, and in general, supporting really the workforce in this incredible task. So stay tuned for invitations that will hit your inbox soon. Just wanted to say as well that there's a feedback form that will just pop up on your screen when you leave the room. Please take a few seconds really to just let us know how was the webinar and how we can improve. And then just a fun bit at the end, if you could all just come on camera, and we'll try to take a picture of everybody online to just while we say goodbye. You can also mute yourself and say goodbye as we close the meeting. And thanks again, especially to you, Enrique and Balbina. Wish you a great rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody. Yes, hi. Bye.
Bye.
Great day and great week. Oh, it's so nice to see you on the screen. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.